every once in a while, we'll look up and there will be the contrails from a launch. And everybody says, what is that? And I said, oh, there was a SpaceX launch tonight. And they're like, wow, that's so cool. And that was not possible 10 years ago. Knowing that I had a hand in it is pretty incredible.
That anecdote, recalled from being out with friends and family, shows just how much Laura Crabtree still cares about what she does, and how matter-of-fact and humble she is. Few have witnessed more history in the field of commercial spaceflight than she has. Far from the biggest name involved with SpaceX, but one of the most important characters in the growth of one of the most unlikely success stories. The Dragon project, responsible for effectively reinventing the US space program, has Laura's fingerprints all over it. Now fronting her own startup in Epsilon 3, providing software solutions for complex engineering and operations with a particular focus on the space industry. Laura continues to blaze her own trail in a world traditionally dominated by men. Laura's fascination with space took hold early in life. When she was just 8 years old, she became completely enamored with the idea of sending humans into space. Her entire academic life was built towards her pursuit of that dream. Graduating with a bachelor's in astronautical engineering and a master's in systems architecture from USC, she took a job at Northrop Grumman, working on advanced aerospace projects before joining SpaceX in 2009. A move that her friends thought that she was certifiably crazy for.
So when I was in college, I had an engineering mentor, and my engineering mentor helped me get through my freshman and sophomore years. And then I was kind of off to the races, and we kept in touch, but sort of the mentorship portion ended, but we were still friends. And, after he graduated, he started at SpaceX. When he was trying to recruit people, he said, oh, Laura, you need to come over to SpaceX. And I said, well, I got this job at Northrop Grumman. I'm really excited about it, and I'll find you in a year if it doesn't work out. This was 2004, 2005 timeframe. Then I moved overseas with Northrop. I kept in touch with him over those years. And I said, I will let you know when I'm coming back, and I would love to interview. I told him that the best thing for me to be part of would be the operations team, because after I started at Northrop, I started basically getting more and more passionate about the end of program lifecycle portion. So, integration, test, and operations, everything post-design. I flew out and I interviewed for a whole day with everybody, and he was like, you have 5 years of experience and we need you to own all of this stuff. Are you down? I said, yeah, of course. This sounds amazing. And most of my friends thought I was certifiably insane to basically leave a very comfortable, great job at Northrop to start at this little known company called SpaceX that, people did not know if they were going to succeed. And I said, well, the worst thing to do is to be given an opportunity and not just like jump in wholeheartedly and at least give it a shot. So I said, I will give it a shot. I will do my best to make sure that this thing succeeds. And if it doesn't, I am very confident I can find something else.
She started at SpaceX in mission operations, going on to be a driving force behind the development of Dragon. For Laura and her colleagues, SpaceX in the early days was a long, long way from the household name that we all know today. But Laura saw the potential even in those early days and had aspirations that would one day manifest into reality.
Yeah, when do you think, because I feel like, as you were saying in the beginning, like it should become sort of everyday routine. And I think we've seen that with Falcon 9. When do you think that launching humans will become everyday routine?
No, we're not there yet. So let's see. So the first Falcon 9 until now, probably another 6 to 8 years. Maybe sooner. I don't want to make super hard predictions, but yeah. Maybe sooner. So maybe by 2030, it will be just second nature. It's already worlds better than it was and cheaper than it was 10 years ago today. I think with more reusability and more access to space, that Dragon will probably be second nature in the next 10 years.
Back at the start, every launch was a major event. Now they happen frequently without any fanfare or fuss, well, except for Starship. Exactly how Laura imagined it should be. The leap of faith, though, she had to take was incredible.
You know, at the time, I mean, now it's obvious they're beyond successful, but a lot of space companies fail miserably. I mean, that's kind of way more common than what SpaceX has done.
Yeah, it absolutely is. But if you're given an opportunity and you don't take it, I mean, imagine if I hadn't taken the opportunity and I was looking back, we're 16 years later, and I looked back 16 years ago and I said, man, I had this opportunity to go work at this company that nobody knew about, and look where they are today. Imagine if I hadn't done that. So I would be a completely different person.
Yep.
And probably pretty sad about the experiences that I would have missed out on.
SpaceX, as we know, was a radical outlier in the aerospace industry. Founded by Elon Musk in 2002, the company's mission was to reduce the cost of space launches and to enable humans to one day live on Mars, which is the most overquoted Elon Musk quote about SpaceX, of course. But unlike traditional aerospace firms, which operated on government contracts and risk-averse cultures, SpaceX embraced rapid iteration, vertical integration, and a willingness to fail fast and learn quickly. Luckily for Laura, she was able to escape the early days working remotely on Kwajalein Atoll, but she was one of those early employees taking on multiple roles on a small, scrappy team.
And so I'm guessing you were able to escape the Kwajalein Atoll phase of SpaceX?
I actually joined just after it ended. So I never did go to Kwajalein, although there were times when I thought it would have been really amazing to be part of that Kwajalein crew. But I have a bunch of friends that were.
This approach was at complete odds with the established giants of the industry. While others built to rigid specifications set by clients, SpaceX designed and built what it believed was best, pushing boundaries with each attempt. For Laura, leaving her secure job at Northrop Grumman for SpaceX was a leap into the unknown. SpaceX had no track record, faced frequent failures, and survival was never guaranteed. The culture demanded ownership, resilience, and the ability to thrive in uncertainty. But Laura Crabtree embodies those things. Joining SpaceX at that stage meant betting on a vision, not a guarantee, but it propelled her to become one of the most important figures in SpaceX's history.
I mean, the first 6 months were pretty hard because I think we might have had 12 people on the team. And we were responsible for recovery, all of the ground systems. So all of the GUIs, both for Falcon 9 and Dragon, all of the training, all of the operations development work, which is, ConOps development, procedures development, flight rules development, all of that. And we had 10 people. And so it was pretty hard for the first 6 months. And also I had to basically change my way of thinking of ownership from the Northrop type of ownership to the SpaceX type of ownership. And, what I mean by that is Northrop has sort of checks and balances. You do something, you take it to someone for a review, that person signs off and says, this looks great, move forward. At SpaceX, there were so few people that you had to do all of that yourself. And so, my manager at the time said, hey, I need you to develop our operations. Like, what are all of our people going to do in mission control? And I said, well, okay, where are all the design docs? And he said, all of the engineers are here. And I said, okay, well, who should I talk to? He goes, whoever you need to. So you basically had to design it from scratch yourself. Not that there wasn't a design, but spending time on documentation was not the most important thing at that time. It was getting to flight. It wasn't important to have very clear, design documentation and communicate it up the chain. It was, what is the thing that will unblock us from getting to the first flight? And then we'll figure out things as we go. The change in thought process is really important, which is, you own it. So it's a sink or swim environment, and right. You are the person in charge of your own destiny there, at least in those days.
I think a lot more companies would benefit from having that approach, but there are obviously cons.
Well, yeah. I mean, you might not have much of a life.
No?
depending on how much you're responsible for at any given time. But the sense of ownership is very strong there. You develop a sense of pride in literally everything that you do. And I felt so connected to each and every person and each and every mission in the early days that, I would give up everything to be at the pre-launch checkouts. Even though I was mostly focused on Dragon, I would be at a lot of the static fires watching. I would be there supporting, doing whatever needed to get done so that we could get to the next milestone.
The earliest Dragon missions were a defining moment for both SpaceX and for Laura. At the time, SpaceX was still proving itself, and nobody really knew if the company could deliver on all of its promises. The first Dragon spacecraft designed to ferry cargo to the International Space Station was funded through NASA's Commercial Orbital Transportation Services program. This was a huge experiment in outsourcing critical space operations to private industry. The stakes could not have been higher. Laura herself said that their entire operation was on a PDF document that everybody printed out.
Everybody knows about the wheel of cheese that we flew, but I think one of the things that is hard to wrap your head around is our entire operation was on a PDF document that everybody printed out and had at their desk as a paper copy. There was an edict later, no paper in mission control. We also had it as an executable PDF copy where you could put check boxes, but that was the first thing that we wanted to change for the next Dragon missions. But we're sitting there and we have all of our nominal operations, just okay, mission director says this, systems operator 1 says this, checks this telemetry, and it was very planned out. But then we had this whole other document, which was here's all the potential contingencies that can happen. If one of the thrusters doesn't fire, if you have overheating or overpressurization, or the burn doesn't happen, because there were only very specific things that we could do to mitigate loss of the vehicle. And so we're all sitting in mission control and, giving it a kind of a little bit of a coin toss, is this going to work? And there's only so much preparation you can do before flight. You can do testing to mitigate all the failures that you can plan, but there's always the potential for the things that you don't plan for. And those are the things that actually go wrong. So a lot of us thought there's going to be a whole bunch of things that go wrong on this flight because we don't know what we don't know yet. So this was a learning mission.
Right.
And the fact that it worked so splendidly, I don't know that any of us could have predicted that. We were sitting there thinking, we can't do any more preparation. We can't do any more vehicle checkouts on the ground. Can't do any more static fires. It's either going to work or it's not going to work. Probably a 50-50 shot.
Successful launch, orbit, and intact reentry have been accomplished by only a few nations to date. The SpaceX mission today is the first time an entrepreneurial enterprise has joined this very elite company of spacefaring entities.
In 2012, with the world watching, the SpaceX team had a moment of truth. Would all that hard work pay off, or would years of toil ultimately end in failure? When Dragon successfully completed its mission, birthing with the ISS and returning safely back to Earth, it was a total watershed moment. SpaceX had just become the first private company to deliver cargo to the ISS, changing the future of spaceflight forever in just one mission. For Laura and her colleagues, these were personal achievements as much as they were a corporate success story. The willingness to take risks and stick with the project lined with uncertainty had paid off in the best way. But this was just the start. Earning NASA's full trust wasn't just about providing the technology. It was much more than that, proving that a private company could be a responsible partner in human spaceflight and do the right thing when big money was on the line. Becoming the first commercial vehicle to dock with the International Space Station was a groundbreaking moment.
There is a lot of trust you have to build up with the NASA community, and that took a lot of time to build that trust. There were a number of people that did not believe in the beginning that we would do it. And that's pretty standard. I mean, I don't know if I were in their shoes, if I would have believed it, but but we spent a lot of time going through a lot of simulations, doing a lot of prep work to prove to them that we were who we said we were, that we were going to show up in the best way we knew how, and that we were going to do it safely to make sure that the space station, was safe on approach. And, our number one mission at that point was, make sure that on final approach, the space station is safe and the people are safe.
For Laura and her team, every simulation, procedure, and sleepless night was paying off, earning SpaceX a seat at the top table, in a position where no private corporation had ever been before. They were trusted with the safety of those brave men and women who spend time orbiting Earth in the ISS and were able to pass the test every single time. Laura was on the console the first time Dragon was tested, and for the historic 2012 trip to the ISS. Early on, her responsibilities included authoring, testing, and executing hundreds of procedures for both ground operations teams and astronauts, as well as developing flight software tests.
I was at SpaceX from 2009 to 2020. I was working in mission operations there. So I did training, I did simulator development, I did recovery, everything in mission controls, from the operators to the applications we used in mission control to the GUIs and everything in between.
And as Dragon advanced, Laura's role expanded to encompass crew and ground operator flight training. This made her the lead trainer for NASA's Commercial Crew Program. She was responsible for getting astronauts ready for SpaceX's first crewed missions, including the landmark Demo 2 mission in 2020. During these missions, Laura was a core operator, directly communicating with and advocating for the crew during free flight. And her leadership was one of the reasons NASA trusted SpaceX in delivering on the Dragon project. Over time, she became the go-to person when it came to Dragon. It didn't matter if it was a technical or human problem, Laura was the person to make sure that problem was solved, culminating in a call from astronaut Doug Hurley from orbit, thanking her for her work on the mission, something she notes as one of her proudest moments.
Wow, so it must just be incredible to see what Dragon is today and how reliable, sort of like the, workhorse of the industry.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. I was part of the firsts for all of the Dragon missions, and it's pretty amazing to see how far they've come. Even since I left in 2020, just, all the repeatable flights, both for cargo and crew, and how, people just expect that it happens. We always had this idea at SpaceX. So I was there for the first Falcon 9, and, we always had this idea in the back of our mind of, wouldn't it be cool if launches happened and nobody cared? Because it's just expected, right? Of course, we've gotten to that point now, and to look back and, I play in a softball team, adult softball league, in my evening hours. And so we play down here in Torrance, and every once in a while we'll look up and there will be the contrails from a launch. And everybody says, "What is that?" And I said, "Oh, there was a SpaceX launch tonight." And they're like, "Wow, that's so cool." And that was not possible 10 years ago.
It was in 2020 that Laura decided it was time for something new, and she stepped away from her role at SpaceX. Still, of course, excited by the progress she's seen in the time since, but more excited to branch off on her own path. Today, Laura leads Epsilon 3, building software to power the next generation of space missions. And that risk came full circle. It was, of course, a risk to join SpaceX when it was just a startup, and it was also a risk walking away.
I think the main thing for me was I wanted to get to first flight. I wanted to get Doug and Bob, once they were assigned, off the ground. And, once I had realized that, I wanted to solve a different problem. And so that led me to founding Epsilon 3 and solving the problem of, what is the infrastructure layer of software for how we operate our vehicles. I don't want all of these companies to have to build their own bespoke software to operate safely and efficiently, because that is not an efficient use of anybody's time. I want people to solve problems that are unique to their businesses. And if everybody has the same software problems and they build their own software, we're not utilizing our talents to the best of our capacity.
Thanks for watching. If you want to see the full unedited video interview with Laura talking about her incredible career, I will post it for my Patreon subscribers. Also, remember to subscribe to Ellie in Space so you don't miss my next video on all things SpaceX and space travel.